Super, thank you. Right, again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Williams. I'm a member of the Portland Utility Board and will be facilitating today. Our co-chair, Robin Castro, is not able to be here today. So I am calling the meeting to order under Portland City Code and state law. The Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made this meeting available for the public to listen to, an audio broadcast, and the meeting is also being recorded. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written comments by sending to utilityboard at excuse me, portlandoregon.gov. The pub believes and acts on anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with pub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that's targeted toward people made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means speaking up as a community when there's wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And we put these principles into action by speaking up and speaking out. Each of us is empowered to maintain the culture of the board, and we focus on the impacted individual or population and condemning conduct, but not people. A few logistics from Amy, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Amy Archer Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you're addressing or that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by me, so please limit any chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. Co-hosts, I may lower your hand once you begin speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can also raise their hands and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos can be turned on when you're speaking if desired. It's not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're connecting by phone, you can press *6 to mute or unmute. As mentioned, the public comment will be taken during comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with me or raise your hand. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. I'll pass it back to you, Karen, for the agenda.
All right, I think we are still one short of quorum, unless Julia has popped in since I last looked at the list. But we can go ahead and have our public comment period, and we'll probably hold off on any disclosures sorry, what am I trying to say? Disclosures and meeting minutes approval until we have our quorum. So we'll go right into an update from the Portland Water Bureau on the Camp Creek fire and potential impacts, or hopefully no impacts to the Bull Run watershed. And then Quisha Light and perhaps other staff will be introducing us to some ideas about a new and innovative program called the Smart Discount Pilot Program. And we all had some slides ahead of time. You may have had a chance to look through those. And we hope to have at least 20 minutes or so at the end of the meeting, depending on questions for Quisha, about our annual report and work plan that's due at the end of this month. And that's it. We'll have a few announcements and adjourn after that. So let's go right into, well, let's see, for the folks here, I can ask again once Julia is here, but are there any disclosure of communications for the pub members that are present?
Yeah, I have some. I mean, should I go?
Yes, please go ahead, Bob. Sorry, I can't see hands. So yeah, please just go ahead.
I can find the hand button anyway. So yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of communications with City Council and others about the floodplain management plan that affects particularly BES's work. So been pretty actively lobbying on that.
Thanks for getting that on the record. Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see other hands, so thank you very much. Let's see if there is any public comment. I'd invite public comment members to send a chat to Amy if you have a comment, or hit *9 to raise your hand, or go ahead and raise your hand via the Zoom hand raise function. Any or all to let us know you have a public comment.
This is Amy, and I've not received any requests in advance, and so far no chats. So, but I do see Jessica Zanow is in the room and has raised their hand. So Jessica, go ahead.
Hi there, thank you. Yeah, just a general comment. I'm still here because I'm concerned about rates. We just had another big rate increase. And I haven't found so far, unfortunately, this to be a productive venue to see those concerns addressed, but I'm still here and still paying attention. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Jessica, and thanks for that feedback. It's good for us to hear. I'm sorry it hasn't been a productive venue for you, but thank you for still being here and giving us a chance. All right, so let us go ahead and have our update about the watershed and the Camp Creek fire and what's going on there. And I think we're hearing directly from Director Solmer, I believe, on this.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Williams. I'm Gabe Solmer. For those of you I haven't spoken to, I am the director of the Portland Water Bureau. It is nice to be with you today, and I'd like to just take a few minutes to go over a little bit more information. You've probably also seen this in the media. It's sort of starting to be less in the media now that we're in a more of a steady state, but I will just go through, and if there's anything you have questions about, please, you can add that in the chat if I can see that, or let Amy know and she can ask me, or just raise a hand. Happy to go through this in more detail, but I'll give you the high level view. And obviously this information is subject to change, but let me tell you where we are. And first I'll just explain how it started. So on the evening around 10:30 at night on August 24th, so about 12 days ago, we had a lightning strike that sparked a fire in the watershed. And the fire is located, you can see on this slide, located on U.S. Forest Service land. It's been named the Camp Creek Fire because it started right near Camp Creek. And if you're not familiar with the watershed, we of course would love to get you up there, but we have, that's been a bit delayed with this event. 95% of the watershed is owned by the Forest Service, and then the city owns the remaining 5%. So this fire is actually burning on Forest Service land, not within city jurisdiction. We did have a very quick response from firefighters. So we've also worked very closely with them and with our city partners on contingency planning. And obviously our top priority is ensuring staff safety as we're working to protect the water supply and our facilities in the watershed. We did have a boost from Mayor Wheeler on the 27th, I believe, last weekend. He declared a state of emergency, and we are working with Incident Command through the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management to work here all together on this. As of, I think my information is from 9 a.m. this morning, we have a fire that's burned approximately 1,900 acres. It's about 1.3 miles from Reservoir 1. You can see that on the screen right in the middle, and about 1.9, almost 2 miles away from our Headworks treatment facility. That's also on the map there. And the importance of that is that Headworks is where we add chlorine to treat our water. If we are not, if Headworks has to be evacuated, then we would no longer be able to treat that water, and we would have to rely solely on groundwater. The fire is 16% contained. I've learned a lot about fire terminology as we've gone through all of this. The fire is burning along two roads. Sort of to the south of there is what we call Road 14, and to the northwest is a road called the 12 road. I'm sorry, 10 road. Those are sort of the boundaries on what the firefighters are doing, and there's 576 personnel on the fire right now. They are making sort of a box, so they're making lines using the roads and extending the roads so that they can contain the fire. They don't call it containment until it's actually right up to that line. And right now the fire is, they call it creeping and smoldering behavior. So it is coming up to those lines, but fairly slowly given the kind of wet, moist weather that we've had. So that has certainly helped over the last few days, but they are not actually able to do that burn right at the road to remove some of those fuels until it gets a little bit drier. That weather they're expecting this week, and so they will be able to, we'll probably see a jump in that containment. In the last week, we have not seen significant changes in the proximity to the fire, so it is not getting any closer. And we are looking for the rest of the week at light winds, and those are not those east winds that we sometimes get towards the end of the fire season. So that's very good news. The Fire Command feels very comfortable with where we are. We've also continued our regular water quality monitoring. We haven't found any measurable impacts from the fire since that started. So just another point of reference. Let's see, we do expect that the fire, because of the dense canopy and the fact that this is old growth forest with a lot tight canopy, so that rain that we got a few days ago is not penetrating much to the fuels beneath. Those are going to continue to smolder likely through Thanksgiving. That's what we're hearing now. So it is something that will be with us for a while. We've used the time as the fire stabilized to go over all of our contingency plans, evacuation plans, trigger points, all of that. So happy to get into more of that, but I don't want to take up the whole time. I'm coming to you from our Emergency Operations Center. So we've had a contingent of folks here in the last 12 days. One thing I did want to let the pub know is that we don't have any current water restrictions in place. We are developing multiple contingency plans if we did need to ask the public to reduce their use. And I want to tell you sort of the two primary scenarios in which that might happen, because if it does happen, we would certainly rely on the pub as one of our avenues and ambassadors to the public and to communities to get the word out. So as I mentioned, if we did have to evacuate Headworks, then because of the fire behavior, we would not be able to serve water that had been treated with chlorine. We would be relying on our groundwater system, and we may not have enough water from groundwater to meet our full demand. That scenario is not likely, certainly in the next week or so, and that's as far as we can see on the forecast. So we do have contingency plans for that, but it's not looking likely. The other one is that when we do get what they call a season-ending event, meaning a lot of rain that ultimately puts that fire out in the next month or even 2 months. Those of you who remember Eagle Creek know that that burned for many months before it was actually out. That rain will be amazing and will put the fire out, but then we will have burn scars on the land. And when all of that rain falls on the land, it will take ash and dirt and debris into the water. That can cause a turbidity event, which just means that sediment gets goes up into the water. And if that turbidity is severe, then we could have a situation, because we're an unfiltered system, where we could not serve that water because of the turbidity levels. At that point, demand will probably be fairly low, given that would be into our fall and winter months. But we could also see a curtailment, a water restriction point at that point if we weren't able to serve water from the Bull Run, and again, relying on groundwater. If that couldn't meet demand, depending on demand at that point, that would be the second scenario in which we would need water reductions. And just to give you some context, we very frequently do see turbidity at some point during the winter rains. That's not an unusual circumstance, but of course, we haven't had a fire of this magnitude in several hundred years, so we don't know how that will intersect with turbidity at this point. I would just give a plug to our website if you want to see more information. It's updated every day. It's just portland.gov/water/Camp Creek Fire. So you can find information there. And of course, Water Bureau staff is available if you have questions at the moment, or through Amy if you want to ask us anything as you think of it later. Turn it back over to you, Karen.
Thanks for that update, Gabe. Actually, I do have a question, and that is about the smoke conditions for the workers that are up at Headworks and the treatment facility. Are those conditions being monitored, and might the staff at Headworks need to leave because of poor air quality? Not necessarily because the fire is, encroaching on the Headworks. Are there other conditions where they might need to leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. At this point, they have all of the personal protective equipment, PPE, that they would need to stay on site. But yes, that is monitored both for our crews that are within the watershed, although that's a pretty small number of people on our side. Of course, there's the firefighters, but also in town. We are not seeing, because of the weather, we're not seeing a lot of that smoke in town. But if you were in town a few days ago, you did see that sort of hazy, smoky conditions, especially near the airport. I think they did report unhealthy air. So yes, we do monitor that, and we are looking out both for our Headworks crews, but also for our in-town crews and anyone who's out in the field to make sure that they're outside of that unhealthy air.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Thank you for the update.
So, like,
a somber update.
Yes, but I think some reason for optimism too. Obviously, this has been a really, really difficult time, and we are so thankful to the United Command and the Forest Service. They have just been fantastic. It's a Type 1 team, so if you know anything about firefighters, they are really the best of the best, and they have been fantastic, and also very, very, I would just say, they have been really sympathetic to and very understanding of the fact that they are in a watershed that provides the water supply for 1 million people. So we have really, really appreciated their respectfulness. I have to jump off in just a few minutes, but I will, I've got staff on board. So if you do have a question that comes up, feel free to get that to Amy or to Cecilia, and they will get that to me, and I can get you a response.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And Karen, this is Amy. Just for the record, I did want to point out that we did have a 6th member, Julia, appear, so you are at full quorum.
Terrific. All right. So I think we're going to charge ahead to the discount program presentation on that. We may come back to minutes at the end. So I believe, Quisha, if you are ready to start your presentation.
Yes, one moment, trying to get and I'm able to share, right? Okay.
Yes, I've stopped sharing my screen, so you can share yours now.
Perfect. Are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Good.
Perfect. So, and I am joined today by Brian Glenn, who is the CEO of Service and is one of the partners with whom we've been working to try to develop this pilot. So I'm really excited to talk with you all, to get your feedback. So just to kind of set the foundation, today the purpose is for us to share this pilot that we are designing with several external partners. We are working with Service. We are working with the Government Finance Office Association. And when I say we, I mean the Water Bureau and BES, because this is a joint effort trying to move this forward. And then the other entity with whom we've been working is some professors and students from the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. So just really excited to be able to talk with you about how we're thinking about financial assistance as we go forward into the future. I know you've had your own concerns about our financial assistance program, your own recommendations, and would like to just get your feedback here to see how some of what we're thinking about aligns, maybe addresses some of the concerns that you've had. Yes, so feel free to jump in and ask us questions. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at the slides, but it was a holiday weekend, so I understand if you did and wouldn't blame you if you didn't. So I will just quickly let Brian introduce himself. I'm sorry, Brian, forgot about that. And then we'll just run through the pilot and what we're thinking. Go for it, Brian.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Brian Glenn, as you mentioned, CEO of Service. I've been super thankful to work with the team at the Water Bureau, particularly over the past almost year. We've been coordinating and discussing ways around how to address affordability as well as collections within the Bureau. And so I'm not sure if you all were privy to the analysis that we did earlier this year, but much of it drives what we're doing now and is the reason why we've designed this. So this is really something that we, after taking a look at the full landscape of the accounts, is something that we thought that might be appropriate and fitting of the goals that PWB already has. So with that, I'll let Quisha take it back.
Thank you. All right, so I just want to quickly kind of jump in. We've had our financial assistance program since 1992. Been around for many years. We've assisted a lot of people. Thousands of people have been able to benefit from our program. And over that time, we have also seen that we haven't had as much participation when we think about the number of people in our city that we know actually need assistance. We've had challenges with application barriers for some, whether there are language barriers that make the application difficult, being able to get all the documentation in, processing through it, having the staff to process through it. We've seen an increase in applications through COVID. And since COVID, some of that, we've had lack of awareness about the program. And we see, even with all these things, we see that there is an increased need for utility assistance because that utility burden, we had someone on already talking about increasing rates. So we see the impact because it's not just their water, sewer, stormwater bill that their customers are facing. They're facing the realities of their electricity bill, their gas bill. All these things add to that increasing utility burden. And then so with that, you see an increasing number of customers becoming eligible for your programs. But again, many are not aware, many don't know that the program exists. And so over these years, we have learned and made adjustments to the program, but we've consistently seen that there are participation limitations. We've seen the application barriers, just that general lack of awareness. Even with the changes that we've made, we've seen that we are in some cases over subsidizing some customers because we offer this flat fee discount. And that makes it where you may have some people who end up with a $0 or $5 bill. And then that raises the question of, is that the level of assistance that customer truly needed? Or could we have offered them something less and it still would have helped them pay their bill? Being able to figure out what does that customer really need and not just have this generic flat discount that we're offering. And so when we combine that with some of the things that we saw and we're still seeing as a result of COVID, this smart discount pilot and the work that we have the opportunity to connect with folks that like Brian at Service and the University of Chicago has been really helpful to us because they're looking at how do you look at the individual needs of a customer. Because what we still see is as a result of COVID, we saw increased debt. We saw payment delinquency increase. We've seen failed payment arrangements, despite how many we're setting up. Customers, is getting a little bit better, but we see that consistent failure of payment arrangements, and we see the increasing debt that customers are in when it comes to their utility bill. And then we see our program being underutilized. And again, I go back to the problem of just having that flat discount, which over subsidizes some, and then it's just not offering any assistance to others. And so we see a solution here is to go to percentage-based discounts. But what we want to do is not have that be a percentage-based discount where we sit down, where some programs just say, we give you a certain percentage based upon your income. We'd like to use machine learning algorithms to analyze some socioeconomic data, historical account data, to estimate a customer's ability to pay for their utilities or services, and offer them a discount based upon that analysis. So let it be data driven, because we've tried the approach with the human aspects, and we see human bias can kick in when it comes to applications. And I'm so sorry, my allergies have been bothering me today. So we see that where human error and human biases can come into play. And we'd like to take a purely data-driven approach as much as possible to analyzing the need that customers have. And what what we believe will end up happening is, as you'll be able to offer discounts that ensure affordability for low to middle income customers. Because as I stated earlier, you see the increasing utility burden, you see the increasing number of people needing assistance, or some that are just priced out of being able to qualify for the program, but they just need a little bit of assistance. And this would be a situation where the algorithm would determine, based upon certain data, what discount to offer them. And we also believe that this will help us to maximize our own cash flow as we get customers accustomed to paying their bill in a timely manner, and as we're offering that discount. We think that there's going to be some benefit to reduction in shutoff. We believe that it's just going to be a more equitable approach. We hope to see some lower outstanding balances and just better efficiency overall when it comes to assigning the discount, our systems being more automated to handle this, because it's not an application, so a person doesn't have to necessarily know about the program to benefit from it. And so we believe that we'll also get a lot of data-driven, a lot of insights from this data-driven approach. So at the heart of it, this pilot would allow us to transform water discounts and have a greater impact. When from an equity standpoint, we are taking a fair and just approach that aligns discounts with customers' actual usage and their ability to pay. We would be aiming to provide assistance to low to middle income customers, ensuring that affordability, while also promoting fairness in the distribution of discounts. Efficiency. With that, we believe that this data-driven approach will allow for more accurate estimation of customers' ability to pay rather than over-subsidizing them, and allowing us to reduce account balances over time and stop having customers get to a point where we're adding fees, they miss a payment, and it just continues, and then they get into a cycle. But we believe that we can actually offer the discount at the right time, at the point of when they receive that bill and they see it clearly, then we can start to see better payment behavior from those customers. And they can clearly see without any effort that they're being offered some assistance and getting that. And we believe that's going to prompt them to be more willing to say, I'm going to pay my water bill and take care of this, because they see that we're putting something on the table. We're offering it to them. They didn't have to go through applying for and offering blood and everything else to apply for it, which is what we see now. Affordability aspects of this. The pilot aims to establish pricing and discounting strategies that consider the customer's financial situation, because we can tell based upon their usage, we can tell a lot of things based upon their payment history. we can see a lot of things about a customer that can tell us how affordable this bill is for them. And then, like I said, we address that group that oftentimes is our middle income customers that are bearing the weight of a lot of this, and they're offered nothing because they don't meet, federal income guidelines. They don't meet a lot of things. And we believe we can just distribute our money more efficiently and get those discounts out there in the right way using this program in a much more, and create a little bit more affordability for customers. And then it's just innovative at the end of the day, it's innovative because, right, we're using machine learning algorithms, which has not been used to really assign discounts and to take in all this data. It's a new approach. And we are sensitive to what it's going to take for us to provide personalized, tailored financial assistance. It means that the data we put in, there has to be integrity in the data, that we have to ensure that there's no bias in even the data sets that we're using. And we feel good about that. We've spent a lot of time with the University of Chicago. They have spent a lot of time with Service and others digging into our data, understanding the data sets that we have, and we really feel like we have a solid data set that's able to help them train the algorithm to offer appropriate, personalized financial assistance discounts. So just quickly on, whenever you do a pilot, it's like, what's the question you're really trying to answer here? And for us, this is the question: can we use economics and machine learning to create a more equitable and efficient system for utility bill discounts? And that helps more people who are struggling financially without harming the Bureau's revenue. And I think it's just really important to make it clear what is the question that we're really trying to answer so that we all get that. It aims to increase the number of eligible residents who can benefit from our discount. And it is, so I think it's just really critical to know that. And it aims to ensure that implementing this discount does not have a negative impact on customers ultimately, but the Bureau and the revenue that's necessary for us to deliver service. The objectives clearly are to understand customer ability and willingness to pay better, to optimize and expand our financial assistance program. Right now, on average, we serve about 7,500 to about 8,000 customers a year. We think that we can offer assistance to more customers and probably still use the same amount of money that we're giving to those 7,500 to 8,000 customers. We could spread that across more customers and have a greater impact. We also are looking to assess the impact of percentage-based discounts versus flat rate discounts. We believe that that is going to get us to a more equitable situation too. And measuring and evaluating the benefits of just segmenting pricing for our customers and for the bureaus. So just the approach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and I'm going to let Brian kind of start to walk you all through what the approach is and how we're going to run through the pilot, what the phases of it will be. But if there are questions, please feel free to stop us at any point.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions now? No? Okay. So Quisha, you want me to just pick up on this slide and talk about, okay. So let's build from here. Analysis and segmentation, comprehensive review of Portland utility accounts. So we've already done that. We've already done a pretty comprehensive preliminary analysis of all of the single family accounts. And to boil this down, what we're dealing with is a term called heterogeneity. And that's the opposite of homogeneous. So that means that there are a big diverse group of people that don't have the same income, who don't have the same usage patterns, they don't have the same family dynamics. So when you're solving for a discount or even a fee, it's obvious that you will not be able to, quote unquote, give everyone a fair discount or fair fee. And so because all of these people come from different backgrounds and have different abilities to pay. So what we've done is essentially said, let us figure out first what is the best way to attack this? And let's see what's going on. So we saw in the data that folks who were setting up payment arrangements were defaulting at above a 40% rate. And that's for people who weren't on financial assistance. The people who were on financial assistance were, I think, at 46 or 47%, almost 50%, they were defaulting. And many of these people were setting up payment plans and terminating their payment plan within a matter of days, just a couple of days later, just not making the payment, setting it up just to avoid shutoff. And so that, to us, that signal that there's a huge demand or an increased demand other than the low income program that you all currently have. And so as Quisha's already kind of laid out the, whether she realized or not, has already kind of laid out the methodology for how we're thinking about this, right? So setting the process for the pilot, data exchange, discount application, you know, I think the primary thing to consider here is when you use a word or term like machine learning, you know, what does that actually mean? And why is it being used in this case? Well, going back to the heterogeneity, right? So anytime you have heterogeneous effects, that means that you have to handle people different ways. That's where the individual or personalized aspect of this comes in. And there is no other way to be equitable than to deal with people on a person-to-person basis. That is the most equitable way of dealing with individuals, and to consider their circumstances. And so what we did is even during our analysis, we looked at race and we looked at income. And even when we controlled for income, these things you probably already know. Portland is, 5 or 6% Black, a couple percentage points Latino, and we saw them overly represented in these batches of folks who were experiencing or should be experiencing shutoffs. They weren't experiencing shutoff because of the COVID rules, and these folks had accumulated debt. And so even when we controlled for income, we still saw a positive correlation between just being Black and Latino and having debt. And so that brings into the question of what's actually going on here. And so that's why you need powerful tools like machine learning, is to scrub, hundreds of thousands, millions of data points to be able to eliminate noise and to get rid of the things that have led us down this path. And so, if you were to ask me right now, do we have any suspicions about what sort of attributes or features would a person who's accumulating debt has? We all probably could give you one or two, but the reality is it needs to be data driven. And so the way we do that is by taking the data that we're getting on usage when they go out and these folks are using their water month in, month out, or quarter in and quarter out. We're taking that and we're feeding that data into a model, and we're taking other data from particularly TransUnion, and we're looking at other socioeconomic data that we can't get from the city. And then we're analyzing and saying, what other features does this person have, or do these accounts have, so that we can begin to predict what is the appropriate discount for a person who, for this conversation, who makes $35,000 a year, who has 4 children listed in their home, that lives in this type of single family home. These are the types of things that machine learning can unlock for you that, quite frankly, would be untenable if this was being managed and administered by human individuals. So for data exchange, the discount application, again, much of this is something that we've been discussing and working with the folks at the Water Bureau, and just trying to figure out what's the best cadence, how do we deliver data back and forth, and working on that. And many of these answers we've been able to come to over the past couple of months. I don't think that we really have time to delve deep into each one of those. But as far as the pilot, we're thinking about this in just really 3 phases, and we'll go to another slide in a moment to talk about that. But the first phase really is about getting the word out and letting people know what is actually happening, right? So you need people to know that we're establishing possibly new guidance on how discounts will be administered. How does this affect you? Some people will start receiving discounts. You don't need to apply for this. And why is that the case? Well, as Quisha has already alluded to, we've already seen that many of these people don't qualify for low-income assistance right now. They just don't. They're at the precipice, have just earned their way out, maybe like, $5,000 more than what the income threshold is now. And then what do? Right? They start defaulting because they no longer can get a 50% or 80% discount. And so, our goal is to fold as many of those types of people back in and give them the appropriate level discount. But to be able to do that, we have to first find people's ability to pay. And how do you do that? We do a randomized evaluation. This is the standard across pretty much all research. You need a randomized evaluation. And it sounds like just what it is. We will take a random sample of the population and we will give them a random discount. And when we do this, we will observe how they behave towards the discount that they were assigned. We obviously need enough participants, so we will need 15, 20,000 people to be able to do this, to actually observe and to see how are folks that are within these types of income thresholds, people who have these type of attributes. We need enough data to be able to feed into our algorithm to be able to train that and to really get some good data out of that. So after we do that, after we run the randomized discount, then we take that data and we actually design an algorithm. And then in the next phase, we take that algorithm and we take a second set of random individuals, and we essentially horse race the algorithm against the control group, against the new people who have been brought in for the second phase of the randomized evaluation. And then you find out, how does my data model, how does the randomized, how do these folks who are just paying their bill as normal compare to the individuals who receive a personalized discount? And then after we do that, we're, of course, along the way, we're going to be meeting with stakeholders, community partners, and sort of interrogating, excuse me, interrogating this model to be able to see, what sort of concerns do these community members have? What sort of biases do they think that may exist? Why do they think that the machine learning return this set of features to say that this is the type of discount and these are the type of people who should receive it? We're going to have those conversations. We're going to be very frank and transparent about it. Again, this is not a black box solution where you're just buying an algorithm. This is specifically something that's being designed for Portland and for its customers. So this last one about measuring and evaluating, I mean, we're going to be doing that the entire step of the way. I've been fortunate enough to be able to loop in folks from GFOA, the University of Chicago, multiple parts of the University of Chicago. We got folks at Harvard involved as well. And all of these people are here sort of as I would say like a coalition or an apparatus around us as we do this work to make sure we're following best practices, make sure we're looking at public policy from an equitable lens and doing the things that need to be done to have success for something like this. There's only one more point I want to make, which is, no, you can go ahead. But compliance is really about consumer behavior. And Portland Water Bureau is no different than any other organization who wants to drive compliance. You have positive and negative incentives. A positive incentive is a discount, right? Something we've been talking about. That could be the aid vouchers. It could be a number of things, right? But what is a negative incentive? That's the late fee and that's the shutoff. What we really want to do is eliminate using negative incentives on people who we can quantifiably know that they don't have an ability to pay. That's what we want to stop doing. The shutoff and the late fee has its place for certain people, but we don't want to overutilize it. And right now, if you actually don't know and you can't really assess a person's ability to pay, then you don't know if you should use it or not. And so that's the catch-22 that Portland has been in ever since COVID, is you got this great demand of folks who are flooded into their system saying, we need support. And how do you evaluate that? So guess what you do? You just set up a bunch of payment plans or payment arrangements. And then when people start defaulting on them, you just keep extending them. But meanwhile, it's not making the customer better. The Bureau is not becoming better. And we're hoping to solve that. So I've kind of laid this out already, sort of talking through. You all are free to read this, but I think the key about all of this is this is about offering discounts. We're not using algorithms to hurt anybody, so nobody's going to receive a higher bill than what they've already been receiving. This is about finding the optimal discount for individuals and making sure that that we're mitigating any impacts that the entire bill may have on someone who can't afford to pay it, as well as the collections aspect for the Bureau. So at any rate, with that, I'll let Quisha jump back in.
Thank you, Brian. So I'll take a quick pause to see if there are any questions on any of that, because that was a lot.
I
So,
did scan for
okay.
hands here. I have a couple, Quisha and
Okay.
Brian. I don't. So you're right, this is a lot. And I'm very impressed by the innovative thinking and the deep analysis and creativity and all those things. This looks pretty impressive, even for a proposal for a pilot program. And I expect you're going to be getting to this next, Quisha, and it's the slide with the risks on it and the concerns about privacy. And so my question for now is, I don't quite understand the data that is going to be the input into this machine learning program. I heard, certainly the account data, so I can understand that. That's information that the city has. But data about race and income, and then I heard TransUnion, which to me is like people's credit scores or something like that. So help me understand what data will be kind of input into this program, and maybe what control does the customer have any say in how their data about them is used?
Sure.
Yeah.
Really quickly, so yes, you are correct. We're getting data directly from the city, so there's no confusion about historical account data. But in terms of other socioeconomic data, we have to get that from an external use because you all don't have that. And so this is, again, how you solve for those heterogeneous effects is by looking for what we call poverty indicators. Now, many times a program that's administered, which we're trying to figure out, let me rephrase that. One of the things we're solving for is the low participation in these programs, right? And so how do you navigate that? How do you get to a place where you can enroll more people when you have so many barriers on the front side? And the only way to do that is automatic enrollment. And so if you can do automatic enrollment, how do you tightly define and find information and data for your customers that currently you don't have? Well, we have to go to an external database, third party, to be able to get that information. And that's something that we're doing to be able to find just basic information. How large is this household, right? And measure that up against usage. Let's look and see, the beyond the census tract for the individual household. How is this household? What is their income? Things that go into let's redefine. You said it sounds like credit score. Well, a credit score has to have multiple inputs. So we don't need the credit score per se. We can use some of the inputs that they're using to build the credit score for our own purposes. So we're not necessarily going in and having any sort of preconceived notions about, we need this data, we need that data, we need that data. We're going in from a holistic standpoint and saying, all right, this is an individual household. Let's look at the features and traits here, and let's let the machine learning and let's let the data tell us what are the most predictive features. Again, I want to return back to that because this is all data driven. So we only can get data from you all, and then we go externally and get data from TransUnion, because people like them and LexisNexis are the types of folks who have data on individual households, and it's pretty.
So one of the things though, just to Karen get at what you're bringing up is, like Brian said, we don't have race data on customers. We don't have any of that to input. What we're able to do is take this aggregated data that's from other places, and you can, there's data out there that tells you that if you're in a certain community, that you're more socially vulnerable. So they're able to take all those data inputs and feed it into that algorithm. We're not accessing, or they're not getting any individual data on a particular customer to input into their system, other than our account data. So we're not giving individual TransUnion data. We're not doing that. What we're using TransUnion to do is tell us from an to aggregate across and tell us, are we hitting the right groups? Are we actually having the impact that we want to have? So that we know if the algorithm is actually processing, and is it processing in the right way? Are we truly having an equitable impact? And we need to be able to see that. And that's where the TransUnion data and things like that is coming in to help us understand, are we having that impact that we want to have? So it's not pulling in the individual customer data.
Yeah, one really quickly, one thing, yes, ditto. And we definitely would not be working against protected classes in training any algorithm to be able to target people by race, right? Quisha made an astute point, which is, this is actually, we're looking at outcomes, right? So how do we know if we have the right outcome unless we have a data point telling us that we did hit the group that we want to hit, or if we're seeing the type of people who are affected at a higher clips, if those are the type of people we're targeting and seeing, right? So again, it's completely data led, but we conversely need data to be able to tell us if we've actually hit our marks. So
yeah, so essentially you'd have TransUnion would be able to get, like, if we're giving the address, TransUnion is telling us, here's kind of here's the aggregated view of the impact that you're having. But that doesn't go to anyone other, that doesn't go to the service group, that doesn't go, all the service group is going to get from a TransUnion is, here's kind of the impact that you're having. So they don't get to see or hear anything individualized, but we're wanting to use something that can help us understand, are we having the impact? And that's where the TransUnion piece comes in.
Yes, one last thing. We only work with account numbers. We work with account numbers. PWB keeps all of the names. They keep everything on their side, and we're just sort of working and looking at, again, account level data and passing it back to them. As Quisha mentioned, any sort of personal identifiable information would be going between the Bureau and TransUnion, and they would just, again, be giving us aggregate level data to be able to allow us to continue to design our model or tweak or retrain as we need to.
Does that help answer your question?
Yes, and it definitely helps me have a bit better understanding. But I'm going to keep listening, and we'll.
Yeah, no, and because that one is it and we're only giving essentially, yeah, the exchange is happening between us and TransUnion, not, so I get that one, and it's an exchange that we could have anyway with TransUnion as a bureau for credit purposes anyway, but that exchange is only happening between us, and so they're not, like I said, TransUnion is going to get an address and a name, and we get to know and then level that up and aggregate the data up to tell us, you basically impacted, a certain percentage of folks who, if they're the right people at the right address and it all matches up, it all has to match up. You can't have it. It could be that someone has moved or what have you, but all the data has to match up. to get us to the right percentages and numbers so we see our impact. But I do want to assure folks that this isn't, we're not passing any credit data or anything about customers to anyone. We're not doing anything that we would not normally do. So there's no personally identifiable information flowing to anyone. So I'm just quickly, there are a couple of things that I want to make sure from a customer impact. And this one was something that I realized wasn't really in the slides when I sent this out. But for customers that are enrolled in the randomized trial, there won't be enrollment and financial assistance for them during the pilot. There won't be payment arrangements for them, and disconnections will continue as normal. And we're not doing financial assistance enrollment because the pilot, the discount should be taking the place of that. So I just want to really call that out. The payment arrangement, if a customer takes the discount that they are offered and pays it by their due date, we need to understand, do they have a willingness and an ability to pay? And unfortunately, you kind of have to allow the process to play out, right? If I give you a payment arrangement on your current bill that we just discounted or what have you, then that's not answering the question that we need to answer if I go ahead and give you a payment arrangement on it. We want to know, if we take a customer and they have their current bill and they're offered a discount, will they accept that discount and pay their bill? Or can they accept that discount and pay their bill? Do they have both the ability and the willingness to pay? Because anyone participating in these randomized trials is only being presented with their current bill. We're not, even if they owe a past due amount, we're only testing and presenting them with their current bill to assess whether they, if we offer them this discount, and based upon the analysis, or even with the first randomized trial, if they just get this discount, will they pay the bill and can they pay the bill? And you need the disconnection, because that's the part that Brian talks about. We're offering you a positive incentive. The disconnection, excuse me, is the negative incentive. And we need to be able to test all of those things within the context of this trial. Are those things necessarily completely outside of what we've done, what we do on a daily basis? No, these are, but it's, but we have to be able to test these things to understand what our customers are really struggling through, or to understand fully what percentage of our customers can really pay their bill. We need to get a sense of that. And I don't think we have really good insight into it. We're guessing at a lot of it based upon failed payment arrangements. But that doesn't necessarily tell me that a person doesn't have the ability to pay all the time. Sometimes it's just that because we have customers who will wait until we shut them off and then they'll come and pay that $1,000. So that didn't tell, so it wasn't that they didn't have the ability to pay, they just weren't willing to pay. So yeah. And as you mentioned, so I won't go through all of these because you all do have this, but there are a lot of questions as we go through this that we're seeking to answer. As I stated, trying to understand ability to pay, affordability, and really understanding what that means for our low-income customers. What disparities are they facing? What impact are we having on them? Customer satisfaction and perception of the program is going to be something we really want to answer and understand, because it's going to be different from what we've done. What's the impact on cash flow for the bureaus? And then just the operational feasibility and efficiency of it. How is it different from what we're already doing? Or what challenges will we experience? How is the data collection process going to play out? And then here are just some things that we're looking at from a success criteria standpoint. And those kind of go back to some of those questions. But a big one for us is going to be, does it work? And if it is working, is it scalable? Can we apply this across our entire customer base, particularly single family residential? Can we apply it across that base? And potentially, could you even scale it to apply to commercial customers if you could learn the right data sets and other things? So what is the scalability potential for the pilot? What insights do we learn about our systems, our customers, our rates, and everything through this? So that's some of the things that we'll be looking at for success criteria. And then just quickly, we definitely are working through the communications plan, but as Brian mentioned, getting letters out there that will educate customers on what we're trying to do, explain what the pilot is and how it works, how it's going to assist them, making sure those letters are at least translated in the top 5 languages, and then having ways where we can get that customer feedback, whether it's through focus groups or surveys or what have you, so that working with community partners to get the word out and really understand our customer base as a result of this. And there are a lot of, there are some risks that we've identified and some ways that we're going to mitigate those risks. You mentioned the data privacy and security one. Of course, that's definitely one. We have a lot of controls in place now that we use when it comes to sharing data, beyond data sharing agreements, understanding what types of storage and do our partners have that we're sharing data with, and really communicating transparently with customers around how we're using their data. So those are going to be just critical things. And what unintended consequences, there are things that sometimes you just don't know. So we're really going to be watching and paying attention for just the unintended consequences of the work that we're trying to do here. Because at the end of the day, what we're really hoping to do is have a positive impact on our customers and our community when we see that folks are struggling to pay their bills. How do we get the more assistance out there, and how does it inform and help us understand just rates in general? And just as a final, these are the partners that we have. So from the Water BES side of things, we're really going to be focusing on managing our customer accounts, so watching how those discounts are applied, really watching revenue that's coming in and the flow of that cash, and then just evaluating the effectiveness of the pilot. And we'll be relying heavily on our partners with Service and the University of Chicago and the Government Finance Officers Association to analyze our data, help us better segment customers, to generate those discounts, and again, as we've mentioned, really evaluate the pilot and understand how it will benefit our customers. Because it's one thing, we can start this with water, but there's the benefit for this to stretch across to for PBOT when it comes to fines and fees. There's a possibility for this method to be used in so many different ways, to help people come out of the debt cycle that they're in, and to help bureaus and help the city not be chasing this uncollectible debt just ad nauseum. Like, how do we reset, particularly after COVID, and get people back on good footing? So I know that, again, that was a lot of information, and I really appreciate you all giving us an opportunity just to come in and just start to share with you what we're thinking about, what we're looking at. We'll come back again when this is, more tightly, when things are more tightly defined. But if you have questions, feedback, concerns, like I said, what the heck's and are you kidding me? We'll take it. So I'll stop there.
Quisha and Brian, thank you so much. Let me just look for hands here. See pub members, any questions, what the heck's or are you kiddings right now that you'd like to get out there? It's like Alexis has got one of those things.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks, Quisha and Brian. This was super helpful and interesting. I have a couple of questions. One is related to the data that Karen brought up earlier, and I'm just curious, who is analyzing the data? Does the city maintain and the algorithms? And pardon my ignorance, but does the city retain control over that and maintain kind of ownership over that, or is this an ongoing relationship with an external partner? And then my other question is, say we're wildly successful and this works really, really well and is meeting, you know, the metrics and the goals, et cetera, that we're seeking. And I didn't hear, and maybe I just missed it, a little bit about like, how is this paid for? And so curious about kind of like some of the financial impacts that might be anticipated for the bureaus, and how that is paid for, like if higher income are paying more to kind of make up for some of the discounts, or like how does that kind of shake out in the end?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with how is it paid for? The good thing is our finance person is on, so but right at this point, our financial assistance program is paid for through foregone revenue. So the bureau sets aside each bureau set aside a certain percentage for these programs. And our goal is to pay for this within that bucket of money so that it's not costing any more money. We take the same bucket of money that's been set aside already to pay for this, and show that we can distribute more discounts across more people and help more people within the same allotment of dollars that the bureaus have already set aside. So that is a big goal for us here. And then on control of the data. So I think, so the algorithm and all of that in and of itself doesn't belong to us. I will say that. What is yet to be determined, because we haven't finished negotiating through like control of the data around what part do we get to keep and control and own as a city. Those things are things that, because you're right, there's a certain part of this that we want to make sure that we maintain and have control over. But the algorithm itself will not belong to us. That belongs to Service and that those entities. That does not that is their intellectual property.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions right now. Again, Quisha and Brian, thank you so much for bringing this to us. Maybe last question, when will we see you again? When is the sort of next check-in point on this?
That is something we are trying to work through right now, timeline wise, but we are desperately trying to just bring all this together. So, and hopefully be able to come back and say, okay, we understand exactly how data ownership is going to work and all these things. And we wanted to try to get that worked out over the next 30 days of just understanding exactly how all those pieces are going to work. But I would say my hope would be able to come back to you all sometime in December, or, or hopefully maybe a little sooner, but, but I'm thinking it's probably going to be early December.
And that would be sort of the go date is like when the communications would go out to the population that you'll be working with. Is that
we'll be able to tell you exactly when we think those communications are going to go out and how that's going to work. We'll be able to give you more of those things. That's the goal. I want to come back to you when I know here's the go date for the pilot. Here's how it's going to work exactly. This is the communications customers are going to receive. That we'll have a lot of that worked out. But we do have this fire situation that has kind of made it a little challenging. So that's why I'm hesitant around how long. But right now we're trying to push ourselves to get some of this stuff worked through as quickly as possible, because we know the new year brings a lot of stuff. So yeah.
All right. Thank you again, Amelia, for
thank you
presentation and the information, and thanks for coming to us to ask our input.
Well, I appreciate you all for your time. And if you have any thoughts after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, big topic there, but we have a few more minutes. We can maybe start looking at our work plan. And actually, I forgot, Amy, do we do we have minutes to review that we need to approve?
We do
or-
not
or-
at this meeting, because I have not had
That's
time
good.
to pull those together. So we'll do that at a future meeting.
No worries at all. I didn't, I think it's better if we have the time to spend on the report and the work plan in our last few minutes. So I think Amy is gonna pull up the report as it stands now, I should say the draft report. And I'm just as Amy's pulling that up, I'll just say that this is a report. Well, I shouldn't even call it a report. Well, it's an annual report in our work plan for the next year. And our guiding documents do in fact set a deadline on this, that we need to submit it to City Council by the 30th of September. So we can get started today and invite you all to, spend a bit of time, an hour, 2 hours, however much you have, reading through the report. If you haven't already, sending your comments and suggestions to Amy so that we can come to our September 21st meeting and kind of be ready to finalize a document. Probably typically with our usual, we'll have a couple people work with Amy to do final edits and wordsmithing and that sort of thing. Anyway, so that's the big timeline. And Amy, why don't I just turn it over to you to walk through the document that as it stands now.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Karen, also for getting me some feedback prior to the meeting. So the document that you'll see on your screen does have a few edits and additional comments, and I will get an updated version out to all of you and also incorporate anything that comes up in the meeting today. And we'll continue to revise the document. And prior to the September 21st meeting, my goal is to get a close to final version to you so that any of the final kind of approval and wordsmithing can happen as much as possible outside of the meeting, just by getting information to me, and then I will do some work on it in between the meetings. So we can talk about any of the specific sections. We only have about 10 or 15 minutes, so not a lot of time in this meeting. So if there's anybody who wants to raise their hands and highlight a particular section, I can certainly jump to that if it's something that should be discussed in the full meeting or is better discussed in the full meeting. Otherwise, I can just go through and highlight a few of the changes and responses that I've received prior to the meeting. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have a particular section, if you did have a chance to look at it. So I did receive some feedback in this first section, just suggesting a little more specificity around the terminology that we use, and particularly around the affordability and equity. And so I've incorporated some couple changes related to that, as well as specifically calling out watershed health as a category in this section. So I have incorporated that since the last version that you've seen. That first section is just kind of the high level executive summary. Then it moves into specific issues that have been considered by the board. So the table that you see is just a summary table of all the topics that you've addressed in the course of meetings over the past year. So that's just pulling from agendas and minutes, and my personal recollection of what's taken place. Certainly if something was missed or needs to be highlighted differently, let me know. I've added a couple X's based on some feedback that I received, just as to whether it kind of at a high level relates to budget or policy. In most cases, a lot of these apply to both. So if crossed off or put the X in the category that is kind of the primary area, but sometimes it really is an overlap of the two areas. And then the next section is summarizing your accomplishments and impact. So this is a particular area where I want feedback from you. So I have tried to take some of the highlights that I recall from the past year and from your minutes, and try to summarize either similar to some content that's been provided in prior years. So I've taken the format that you all had approved in the last report that was done, as far as kind of summarizing the issue and trying to, at the end of each of these issue sections, highlight what the city's response has been. I will also be getting more information from the bureaus as to whether there's some additional categories that I've missed, or some content that they want to provide as to how some of your feedback has impacted the decisions that they're making at bureau level, or how they've approached a new policy issue. So some of that may also come up between this meeting and the next meeting in the next version that I send to you. So the main issues that I've highlighted are some of the content areas where you had either formal recommendations that took place in meetings or in written letters, and or some deep conversations. So this doesn't hit on every area that you touched on, but just those that you want to highlight before council in this report. So that included budget related recommendations, stormwater management plan, since you formalized in a written letter, and that letter itself will be attached as an appendix to this report, as are any of the letters that you submit to council. I've summarized some of the engagement around rate study, the involvement of pub members in the hiring of the BES director, the update that you made to your values document and declaring water as a human right. And then some more detail specific to your budget analysis. And there are some, you'll see highlighted in red, the edits that have taken place since the last version that I sent you, based on some feedback from a pub member. And then I tried to capture something that I had forgotten to include, which is some of the changes that you're trying to make to the budget process this year to engage earlier, based on some of the learnings that you had from the last budget process. I've highlighted some of the charter related changes and the impacts and how that connects to your work briefly in this section. There have been some, more in-depth conversations at the board level. So this certainly is an area that could be expanded, or if you want to summarize more of specifics around your concerns or requests to engage, that could be further captured here. And then I had a question in here about whether to include this process coordination, communication, and mutual trust building category, which had been in the prior report. And at least the early feedback I had from a member was, yes, try to include something. So I've drafted some language that I will send out to you. So it's too much to kind of review in the meeting right now, but between the meetings, please encourage you to take a deeper look at that and send me any feedback, because this is just a starting place. I did have a question for you all and a point to just consider about the work plan frame. So for a couple of years now, we've used kind of these 4 category areas at a high level that are the frames or themes of content area that you're considering issues as they come to you. And those have modified a bit from year to year. And so the question is, are people still wanting to use those same frames, or do you have suggested edits? There were a couple edits that were suggested to me. And so I've incorporated a little bit of that into these final 2 sections. And that again was one member's suggestion. So I'll be looking for feedback as to whether there's agreement on some of those suggestions, and also from that member whether I adequately captured what your intent was for some changes to that section. And then I've tried to capture a little bit, again, the reflection in this final category back to the charter related changes, organizational changes that the city is facing, so that that could be captured as a focus area, in particular in the upcoming work plan year. Seeing no hands raised yet, I'll just keep kind of summarize the final two sections. So the next section is at a high level, your work plan. You're of course a couple months into your year, so you're already doing some work on some of these categories as far as presentations that you've had and feedback that you've provided. So this is looking at what's happened the last couple months, as well as what the plan is for the next 9 months. And so the way that it's structured is consistent with how the pub has approached it in the past few years, coming up with this first category being the kind of focus high priority areas that you're planning to dedicate meeting time to in the upcoming year. The next section is also high priority items, but they will have dedicated meeting time based on whether there's information that warrants dedicating meeting time. So some of these might be updates that are provided in writing or questions and answers that take place outside of meetings, or meetings will be dedicated to these topics. So a lot of this is carry forward of some of the work that has been taking place in the past year. And then this final category is pub specific stuff that year to year is primarily work that is expected and or anticipated to continue. There were some recommendations about some additional information to put after this work plan, just to highlight kind of 2 key areas, in particular the recruitment and what's slightly different this year, as well as some of the collaborative problem solving and project teams and the leadership coordination that takes place between co-chairs and the Bureau leadership. So I will try to draft something for you to consider and get that in draft version out to you in the next version. And then the final section of the report is very operational. So it is, pulling facts and figures about, who's on the board, who's left the board, who the current makeup is, as far as who was added. And so there's again a little bit more information that will be updated on that as I pull some data. So those are all the report sections. Any kind of gut reactions initially, or areas that you want to make sure that we dedicate some discussion time at the next meeting, or volunteers if there's some areas that you want to make some suggestions for changes and want to work with me on drafting and editing. Alexis.
Thanks, Amy. This looks really good, and it looks like some of the comments that I had have already been incorporated. So that's always good. I was going to say, once we get the minutes from last time, I do think that it would be interesting to kind of crosswalk the work plan frames with the values that we discussed last meeting, just to make sure that they're consistent across those 2. And then I think it's included in here with some of those new things. But one of the things that I was thinking about that we worked on a lot over this last year was to improve processes for input and clarify when the pub is making input and the purpose of different meetings, and getting involved a little bit earlier, that I think is really important for us to highlight, and just a priority that I've heard and that I myself feel is really setting up pub, the bureaus, and maybe even other public advisory boards for the charter transition. And I feel like that's going to be a big part of our work in the coming year.
Great feedback. Thank you, Alexis. Anybody else?
Okay, well, if you haven't had a chance to look at the document yet and get your thoughts and suggestions into Amy, please do that in the next, 8 or 9, 10 days or so we can come into September 21st ready to ready to make it final. That'd
And
be
as
great.
always, for anybody who has input, email is fine. If it's easier for you to have a conversation with me and have me take notes and work it into the document, that works well for me too. Whatever is easiest for you, as far as making the best use of your time is how I want to support you. So just let me know and I will make that work.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for that flexibility. Yeah, because sometimes it can be intimidating to go in and feel like you have to come up with the perfect words and deal with the formatting and all of that. So thanks for that.
And Karen, I have two quick announcements. So one, I just wanted to let folks know that Water Bureau did identify an ex officio, Joanne Johnson. She is the accessibility analyst, I think is her title, with the equity and policy team. I think she'll be a great fit as far as support and role with the board. She was unable to come today. And of course, the official appointment will take place paperwork-wise with the mayor's office in the next month or so. But she will engage with the board in the future. So I just wanted to let you know that one was pending and we are still working on the BES representative as well. So anticipate in the next month that you'll at least have those additional members for support of your work soon. Also, I had mentioned at the prior meeting that the Northwest Public Employees Diversity Conference, which is scheduled for October 10th, I did get confirmation from the Office of Equity and Human Rights that they have some tickets available and can include pub members in that conference. I did have one member who had reached out and said they were interested, so I will make sure that you are on the list. But if there's anybody else who is interested in participating, please let me know today if possible, so that I can make sure that we get you the information about registration as soon as it comes available. The specific workshops tend to fill up pretty quickly, so you want to look at the offerings that are available online in advance, and then when registration is available, make sure that you kind of earmark the ones that are of most interest and relevance for you. And were there any other announcements from the group? If not, I think we already have the rate study, BES rate study scheduled for an update at the next meeting so that board can give some feedback before they go to council in October. So that will be one topic area, as will the conclusion, hopefully, of the annual report and work plan. If there are other topics that you're eager to make sure are coming up on future agenda items, please reach out to me and or Robin, the chair. I guess there's only one chair, so using co-chair isn't totally appropriate, but so reach out to one or both of us and we can make sure that those are on the list. One, that we are still working on is hopefully an upcoming facilities tour in the coming month or two. So I will get you more feedback as soon as I have had the chance to meet with Bureau staff about when that's available.
And Amy, are we expecting any read ahead material regarding the rate study so people can be looking for that in the next week or so?
I will touch base with BES and find out whether materials will be available in advance. I expect there's probably something. It may not be ready until closer to when I typically send read ahead materials, but I'll get you whatever we can as soon as possible. As well as with the annual report and work plan, I'll try to incorporate any changes and get you versions with ample time to review them so that we're really ready to discuss and finalize them at the next meeting.
Splendid.
Excellent.
Well, thanks, Amy. Thanks, members, for your good questions and attention and engagement. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks.